And it is one of those situations where you may be able to rattle off a few wins here in Limited and find yourself in contention for top 8, even in the early rounds of the constructed portion.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, we got to walk around and take a look at Brad's deck, and it doesn't look like he was especially happy with it. And on the flip side, Eli had a fantastic start with his draft, as he was being fed cards by Brad Nelson. And of course, we remember Brad Nelson opening Ayara. And Eli, first pick, Rankle. So nice little follow-up to the Rankle. First pick Rankle, second pick Ayara, no big deal.
Yeah, he tried to go mono black from that position. You could see why, but wasn't quite able to get there, which is actually fairly typical in the format where you're a little bit short. Now, you hope to fill those in with colorless cards like the Hengewalker that we talked about in Brad's draft, even cards like Ginger Brute or Jousting Dummy, just to kind of say, I just need something because it's worth it for these adamant payoffs and for my great mana that I can get. Sometimes you can't get there, though,
right,
and you have to put a few cards of a second color in. And that's what happened to actually both of our players here, honestly. Both Eli and Brad found themselves in a position where they would have preferred to be just a few cards extra into their color of choice. Black for Eli Kassis, and for Brad it ended up being green, but couldn't quite do it, so they actually had to splash a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, just coming into when we were kind of helping develop the set, we had like specific numbers in mind in terms of like what we kind of wanted people, like how many monocolor decks we kind of expected to see in an average draft. And you know, you just can't support 8 monocolor drafters, for example, right? So if 2 people are looking to dip into being heavy in one color, you're just not going to quite get there.
All right, well, let's kick things off here. Eli Kassis leads with a golden egg. Brad, nothing. Of note here on Brad's side as well, you do see a forest and a mountain with 2 copies of Sir Farron the Hengehammer. It would not be uncommon for him to be able to play one of those if he did have the 2 forests. But it looks like he had access to the forest here as he's discarding one to haggle. He just didn't have the Sir Farron part of the equation. By the way, battle display, or let's see, what did we see here? Oh, I see. He sacked the golden egg here just to get the
mana
creature
fixing.
down. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the name of the game. I mean, it's free mana fixing, a little slow, but free in a card advantage sense. So sure, why not? And there's Reeve Soul.
Yeah, and Eli's hand, lots of powerful cards, but really wants to find a red source. He's got 2 red cards in hand, but also just any land, right? Because he's got that Rankle in hand.
Yeah, the Ember Shieldbreaker on the battlefield, just 2 power, just going to keep punching in there. But critically, the Reeve Soul to take down the Merchant of the Veil does clear the way for the damage, and also potentially takes away Brad's ability to start leveraging that. And look at this, here's Rankle. Mythic rare, Rankle Master of Pranks. And as you can see, when it hits, you get to choose any number of those abilities, and they can be very, very powerful. The haste ability, of course, meaning that there's really no moment where where Brad gets to react here as well.
And if I'm Brad, I think you're just supposed to block here with the Red Cap Riders, because if Rankle does connect and does choose to take the damage from the Shield Breaker, Eli will simply just utilize the sacrifice effect on a Rankle Master of Pranks, which would get the Red Cap Raiders off the board. So, you know, saving some damage, and both players recognizing that that was basically a free attack.
This is also a really tough position now from Brad's perspective, because one of the big takeaways from his draft that both you and I noted, Paul, was the lack of removal. Also the lack of combat tricks, which isn't as relevant here in this particular game. But the lack of removal means that Rankle could just run rampant over this game. Like, Rankle could just stick the whole game, and Brad could never even have a way to interact.
Brad has no removal, no combat tricks, and no reach creatures. So Rankle, especially game 1, I mean, we saw him take, I believe, 1 or 2 Fell the Pheasants, so he might have some answers after sideboard. But game 1, he's just not going to have a lot of answers here. So, for example, here, Brad slamming down a Garenberg Paladin, it's a 5/5.
Hold on a minute.
What happened?
Well, Brad does have actually 3 Fell the Pheasants.
Okay.
He played 2. Look.
And you know what that is? That's a concession to the fact that he has no interaction, right? No removal, no combat tricks. Probably also a few playable short. So he's just playing the Fell the Pheasants and kind of hoping for the best. If he plays against another green-red deck, probably not going to have any targets. But hey, you know, that actually gives him a chance here against Eli. And as you can see here, Rankle connecting again. Brad, tapping out for a 5-mana 5/5, but Eli played a Barrow Witches pre-combat. And now because Rankle got to connect, he gets to just trade his 3/4 for Brad's 5/5 that's on the battlefield.
Where is the counter, by the way, for the Paladin?
I think he was in the process of putting it into the graveyard, but
I see.
But Eli has chosen the sacrifice effect, but it looks like he's also choosing the discard mode on Rankle, Master Pranks.
There we go. And ooh, Yorvo?
Yorvo, okay.
I mean, I guess large individual green or whatever colored creatures at this point are not going to get the job done against Rankle.
Yeah. Oh, and look at this. Brad actually draws an answer. He must have drawn this card for the turn. That's a Fell the Pheasant. Main deck.
He's like, really?
Wait, did this really happen?
They never play around the second one either. It could get ugly. So Eli did generate some advantage with the Barrow Witches, but he was very much all in on this plan. Pretty mediocre turn here.
Yeah,
and now this is a board state where Brad can take over. And there we go. Garenbrig Paladin, he's just going to go much, much bigger than what Eli is bringing to the table. And I'll tell you what, that Fell the Pheasant in the main, that was huge. Oh, but this is nice. Steel Claw Lance now from Kassis means that he can at least start to mount something. On this particular board, it actually doesn't get the job done. The 4 power on the Ember Shieldbreaker would not be enough to interact profitably with the Paladin. And really, unfortunately for Eli Kassis, if he puts the Steel Claw Lance on the drawbridge, normally you'd think that would be really good. It would be able to soak up the damage as a 6 toughness blocker. But unfortunately, at only 2 power, it will not be able to block the Paladin. And it's just going to keep slamming. And by the way, there's 2 of them now.
Yeah. Brad now able to deploy his army of gigantic creatures because he was able to get that Rankle off the battlefield. And Eli, I mean, Steel Claw Lance is a fantastic card, but in the face of these 5/5s, can't really do much here. Eli he can't even chump block here with the drawbridge because of Garenbrig Paladin's ability to have it not be able to be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less.
Yeah, he's just going to get ran over.
So he is at 4. Brad drew the second Fell the Pheasant that he has, just in case Eli can get back that Rankle.
Green. Into green. Go.
All right, Fierce Witchstalker just further puts the nails in the coffin here on Brad Nelson's side as Eli Kassis is going to scoop him up. Wow. So an excellent start for Eli Kassis, gets thwarted by main deck Fell the Pheasant, and Brad Nelson picks up game number 1 after killing that critical card. And look at that smile on his face. He's like, we did it.
Yep.
So that does it for game number 1 there. Again, it really did come down to the main deck Fell the Pheasant, as realistically for Brad, it's just a stopgap against 2 things. One, it gets more green cards into his deck so that he can run more forests and have a better chance at the Yorvo and Sir Farron opens that he dreams of. It's also just his only removal, so he just has to run it.
Yeah, I mean, Brad just had to, when he was building his deck, you're just kind of envisioning some of the ways that you can lose, right? And it's really flyers. He has no answer to flyers because of the lack of removal. So it was just a concession. It's like, look, I need to pick up some wins. And look, I understand that this card could be a dead card. But if my opponent just plays a prized Griffin, even just a prized Griffin, I might just lose the game. So I'm going to play some main and just hope for the best.
That's right. And it worked out really well for him that time. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, though, we'll be right back down into the feature match area with more live draft action here from Mythic Championship VI. Don't go anywhere.
I've got Brian Braun doing here, and we're going to crack this pack of Throne of Eldraine. How are you feeling about this draft format?
I've done very few drafts, and so I know next to nothing about it.
Well,
so.
you know what? We're going to learn right along with you
Yeah.
here as we take a look at what you open here from this pack. As you're opening it, let me know if anything is kind of standing out to you as a card you might consider picking in your draft, say, come Friday morning.
So there's a lot of powerful food-related cards in this pack. I think I actually don't know the power levels, but for me, it would either be Trail of Crumbs or Gilded Goose, which I think are both really powerful. If those were not around, I would probably lean towards taking the Fierce Witch Stalker, which is just a decent-sized creature that generates a little value as well.
So why are you leaning towards a card like Trail of Crumbs?
I think if you get a like green-black or just some sort of food-based engine deck, you can just kind of go off with Trail of Crumbs. Sacrificing food, finding more creatures that get you food, and so on and so forth, and just kind of power through your deck, gain a bunch of life. I think that effect's kind of really powerful in this format, but again, could be wrong.
Well, Gilded Goose kind of does the same thing for you, right?
It does, yeah. The Gilded Goose, it's like a one-mana creature that accelerates you, but also just generates food over and over and over again over the course of the game. It's certainly possible that Gilded Goose is the stronger card here just because of everything it can do.
What do you think about the speed of the format, slow enough to take advantage of cards like Gilded Goose and Trail of Crumbs?
I think so. I think if you have, I think there's enough like early defensive creatures where you can actually set up along those lines. Although some of the aggressive night decks can be really fast. So.
All right, I'm going to hold you to a pick here. What are you taking?
I'm taking Gilded Goose for the bank. I'm rare drafting it for the bank.
All right, so maybe in your standard deck, remains to be seen.
Possibly, yeah.
Gilded Goose here, the pick from BBD.
And welcome back to coverage here of Mythic Championship VI. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. I'm with Paul Cheon, and we've got our two undefeated players in the feature match area, Eli Kassis and Brad Nelson, facing off in the first round of Throne of Eldraine booster draft this morning. And game number one went beautifully for Eli Kassis right up until Fell the Pheasant hit Rankle, and then it fell apart for Eli. So now he's got to try to gather himself and get back to try to get back together and try to find a win here against Brad Nelson, who is now just tantalizingly one game away from a 1-0. We were talking earlier, Paul, that if Brad could pick up a 2-1 in the draft, I think he would be thrilled with that. That would put him just a few wins in standard away from a top 8 here. So it looks like we've got a mulligan here from Nelson, though. So why don't we check in on one of our side tables here. Josh Utter-Layton versus Pyotr Glogowski. Both of these players, by the way, having a very good run in the tournament as well. 6-1-1. They've actually both got a draw in standard, but they're underway. Looks like they're still in game one here.
I see a Giant Slayer and a Wicked Wolf in the graveyard. So Josh has some nice ones here.
Wow. There's the Fierce Witch Stalker, which does its best Wicked Wolf impression and doesn't do it particularly well if you play one against the other.
But Glogowski also it looks like he's in pretty good position here. We have a Trail of Crumbs, got that food on the battlefield, and a Tree Folk with a +1/+1 counter. Oh, there's a Grum Gully in the graveyard, so
yep.
Trying to put all the pieces together here.
Yeah. That's what we have to do, right? When we come into a game halfway through, it's like, oh, I see what happened. That's Toonvale Tree Folk playing Oaken Boon just to pump up a Garenbrig Carver, just to give it 2 +1/+1 counters and set up the next turn. He's also left 2 mana for the for his tapper there. All right, well, it sounds like our main match is all good to go. So let's head back up there. I want to see if Eli Kassis can even things up or if Brad's going to pick up his first round of the day with his green-red deck. Heavy green, a little bit of red.
But taking a look at Brad's deck, he is still playing a good amount of mountains. He's actually only playing 10 forests. So he's at 10 forests and 8 mountains, running 18 lands in his deck.
18.
His curve is fairly high. He's got the 3 Garenbrig Paladins. And, if he does draw extra lands, he's playing both of the Merchant of the Veils in his deck to kind of help filter through those. Of course, those creatures also have Adventure on them, which goes well with the Edgewell Innkeeper that he picked up during the draft as well. Ooh, Eli's got the nice combo that we've seen in Constructed. There's a Cauldron Familiar on the battlefield, and he's got a Witch's Oven in his hand.
I heard somebody call it cat food.
Oh. All right.
It's like, all right, sure.
A little preview of what we may see in the standard portion of the tournament.
And there's a Rosethorn Acolyte now for Nelson, his first play of the game. But as we have seen before, if Brad can untap, play a land, and play a 5-drop here, he could just overpower Eli. Yes, Eli has a nice little combo going with the Witch's Oven and the Cauldron Familiar. That is a very real thing. But it takes a long time to actually get the job done. And if Brad just starts playing 5/5s, all right, and by the way, this is Eli respecting that very much and using his Reef Soul to kill the Rosethorn Acolyte right here and right now. Again, preventing Brad from being able to play, for example, a Garenbrig Paladin this turn.
Yeah, the Acolytes are extremely important in Brad's deck, as he really wants to get to 5. He's got so many expensive cards in his deck, 3 Garenbrig Paladins and an Enchanted Carriage.
Still, getting the Witch's Oven and Familiar combo is sweet. Like,
Yeah.
that's pretty nice.
That's a free damage every turn.
Mm-hmm. And you can see him doing it here. So he sacrifices it, he gets a food token, and then there's an activated ability on the Cauldron Familiar where he can sacrifice a food to bring it back onto the battlefield. And whenever it enters the battlefield, it drains for 1. So this is a repeatable loop that he can do for each time that he either has a food or can activate the Witch's Oven.
Yeah.
In this case, though, he's actually decided not to bring it back.
Yeah, and the reason being is he has an Ayara in hand, so he actually wants to wait for the Ayara to... What?
Brad just scooped up.
What just happened?
It's so funny because, not only, look, there's a few things at play here. There's 3 things I want to mention. The first one is that combo that Eli just that put together is very powerful because IRL also triggers off of black creatures entering the battlefield, and he's going to be able to continually loop that. Number 2, Brad Nelson does not have an answer for it, period. He cannot interact with that combo, so he knows he's going to lose to it. And 3, when Brad knows he's going to lose, he scoops him up. He wastes no time. He's always been known for that. You know, when he looks at it and says, this is not going well, I'm going to lose, he scoops up his cards, and that's what we saw.
Yeah, he understood what was going to happen there. That's 2 damage every single turn, and Brad was simply not going to put enough pressure to be able to kind of close out that game. So yeah, that was still a little surprising. Thought maybe we'd see 1 or 2 more turns, but he was just like, you know what? I don't want to live through this. And meanwhile, Golgoski here with an army of rats.
And a return of the Wild Speaker to make them into the scariest rats you've ever seen. So you take 16.
+3/+3. Yeah.
Josh was like, I'll block. And Golgoski was like, okay, you're taking 16. And Josh was like, correct.
Yeah.
Next game, please. So that is a great way to win the game. Although I have to say, not sure when you guys designed this set if the plan was Mad Ratter, Finisher, Return the Wild Speaker.
See,
that is a very weird.
You see, Marshall, that's a great thing about Magic the Gathering, right? You can be flexible, and there are still going to be times where you can find enough ways to draw cards, even in red, to trigger that Mad Ratter. You still have Merchant of the Veil. Hey, you can put some golden eggs in your deck, and it looks like Golgoski has enough ways and enough creative ways to find triggers off of that Mad Ratter.
You know, there are, we saw the Merchant of the Veil and stuff like that, or, you can do it. It's a thing.
If there's one thing about the format is there is no real shortage of drawing additional cards, right? There's plenty of commons that let you find that extra card. The important thing is finding the payoff cards, which mostly the good ones are all uncommon.
No, wait. I'm at 17, you're at 15. Yeah.
All right, well, let's check in on Paulo Vitor, Damarosa, and Arna Huschenbeth. And they look like, what do we got here? Well, kind of a bunch of medium cards on the battlefield here. It does look like the Brimstone, the Trebuchet there from Paulo just got Scalding Cauldroned out after combat or something.
Ooh, this is going to help force through some damage because Arnie previously had the ground locked up with the corridor monitor to the crashing drawbridge and getting in with the Hypnotic Sprite. But that Steel Claw Lance is not going to allow Paulo to equip that Lost Legion and start getting in for 4 potentially.
What are these guys' records? Woohoo, 7-1 each. So you're looking at one of our top tables here for sure. Paulo at 7-1. Uh-oh. Watch out, world.
Very interesting. And he is well known to be able to, anytime he's in one of those win and in situations, he has a fantastic conversion rate.
The dude's a closer.
He's a closer.
Yeah, he really is. He has a weird gap. Normally, you see a pretty even distribution for the top players after a really long career. Some top 8, some top 16, some top 32s. He just kind of skips the whole top 16 thing and just goes right to the top 8.
Well, the thing is, typically when you have those win and ins, you're going to win about half of those matches, right? Paulo just kind of wins all of them.
Yes.
So he just has lots of top 8s and lots of top 32s, but not a whole lot of top 16s.
Yeah, I was talking to Ben Stark about this, and he just said he thinks he's a closer. Like, Paulo just digs deep and just, can, find that extra level, which I thought was interesting coming from Ben, but...
Right, because Ben is typically highly analytical and will be like, no, this is your win rate, this is what happens,
yeah.
but...
Also, that's exactly what Ben said.
Oh.
All right, well, let's let this one continue on in whatever manner it's going to, because we've got Eli Kassis and Brad Nelson ready to go on our main match, and we got to see who ends up winning that. Heck, this one could still be going by the time we're done. It looked like there was a bit of a stalemate there.
Yeah, who knows when Brad will decide to concede, depending on how...
Right, we don't want to miss that.
Yeah, he did. But I scooped to him because I was biting in. Nice. I didn't know if you were talking about me.
All right, let's get underway here. Well, 1 mana, 1/1 here for Brad Nelson to kick things off, and Eli Kassis says I can do the exact same thing. Cauldron Familiar starts off the proceedings here for Eli Kassis. Why this is another. We've got Forest on turn 2, and still have yet to see Sir Farron from Brad Nelson, one of his more explosive openers. Now, you might get stoked here and be like, "Ooh, Edgewall Innkeeper." Yeah, it's a thing. And look, we're used to people going off with Innkeeper. Brad will not do that here. He's going to play the Acolyte and draw a card, but his deck isn't set up to abuse the Innkeeper. But hey, he's getting free card off it.
Yeah,
here.
I mean, Brad's got to be thrilled that he was even able to draw 1 card with the Innkeeper. I think he has exactly 4 adventure creatures in his deck, maybe 3. And the fact that he was able to sequence it where he can play an Edgewall Innkeeper, have it survive, and draw a card, that's pretty much all you can ask for with that Innkeeper. I think Eli, curious to see if he's actually going to go for this Edgewall Innkeeper. If he took a look at Brad's deck list, he might realize that there's really not a whole lot of creatures that Brad can have. He might be more interested in just killing the Acolyte to prevent Brad from casting those Garenbrig Paladins.
That's what I would do, and that's what he does here. Smart play here from Eli Kassis, understanding the matchup after having studied the list and knowing that Innkeeper is unlikely to do long-term damage here. And now we're going to see Fierce Witch Stalker plus the food token that it brings with it for Brad Nelson. A solid card here. I mean, look, he is going to apply a lot of pressure. That Cauldron Familiar is just kind of sitting there.
And look at Brad. He's like, should I just attack with this Innkeeper? I don't have a lot of adventure cards anyways. Maybe I should try to get in for some damage. I'm sure Eli would happily take that trade.
Yeah, he's going to do so.
Yeah.
As we know, the Cauldron Familiar can come back, but it does require food production, particularly repeatable food production. And while Eli does have access to that in his list, he doesn't have it in his hand right now.
Eli really needed a land there. He's got Revenge of Ravens in hand, which is very, very effective against aggressive strategies, but wasn't able to find it. He's also got an Ayara, but
Yeah, he has
This
a
is-
mountain here. So he's going to have to decide between Profane Insight, or he can run out the Brimstone Trebuchet to help try to stem the bleeding a little bit here. You know, ideally, he goes Profane Insight into a swamp, then plays the Foulmire Knight.
yeah, but that's so risky.
What,
right?
am I
Because-
dreaming, or-
Because if you miss, you're just going to take 6 damage next turn.
And the one from Profane
Right.
Insight.
Exactly.
Ouch.
Yeah, and it looks like he's just going for a double spell here. Again, Brad has no removal. This Foulmire Knight is going to eat a creature.
Yes.
Right?
It
So-
will trade for something. The interesting part about it is that realistically, the best thing it can trade for is something like a Yorvo or this Fierce Witchstalker, because remember, the Garenbrig Paladins just kind of run right by it.
Right.
Also of note, the Rimrock Knight can't block, so while it did look like a fine defensive play here, it was really just Eli using up his mana by getting out the Rimrock Knight. It's not actually gonna be blocking here.
And Brad just has to fight through this Foulmire Knight, so I think he's just going to attack here and just be happy that it's off the battlefield. And, he's going to be able to trample over, so that's about as much as you can ask for here.
Yeah.
Get in for 5, and here's a Paladin. And one nice way to play against something like a Revenge of Ravens is with giant monsters.
And, if we snapshot this board, I mean, Brad's sitting there with 6 power, maybe 7 on his turn, and he's facing down no blockers. So he's got to like his situation here. Really, this game is going to come down to if Eli Kassis can find a land here, and it's got to be soon, and I don't think he has for the turn.
But even if he does at this point, the Revenge of Ravens is just okay, right? He's still taking 5 a turn. If the Revenge of Ravens hits the battlefield, he's still taking 4 a turn.
Yeah.
And next turn, Brad's going to be able to attack in for 7 damage. So,
Yep.
So even if he draws a land next turn, that might just be too late.
Yeah, in fact, it probably just is too late. I think we're going to see Brad Nelson convert here. Basically, there's one more turn for Eli Kassis, and even then, very likely too late for him. So we're going to see haggle here from Nelson. Going to get rid of an additional mountain and try to find some action, but he can, of course, just cast a Merchant of the Veil in any scenario.
What Eli really needs is just a removal spell.
He needs a bacon to a pie or something
Right.
along those lines. Let's see what he actually has access to. He does not have any bacon to a pie, so that's not going to be an option for him here. He has Festive Funeral, which only does 3 right now, so that's not it.
He doesn't have a whole lot of answers here, actually. I mean, there's Rankle, Master of Pranks, but Brad has access to the tracker to sacrifice. So
The Wildwood Tracker kind of soaks up that first hit from that. Yeah. No, the window's maybe closed all the way on Eli Kassis. It's certainly closing quickly in any scenario.
yeah,
That's kind of interesting. Brad actually played that mountain. What does he want to do with it? Normally when you have the Merchant of the Veil, you'd rather just keep additional lands in hand.
it looks like he maybe just wants to have the mana available to sacrifice the food that's on the battlefield.
Yeah, that's
So-
but
But he's
I mean,
so
that
far
could be a whole card.
right. He's so far ahead here in terms of life that maybe it would be better to hold on to the land. Maybe his thought process is, look, if I draw a creature, I'm just going to play it. So I'm not going to have to sacrifice rummage.
Yeah, I mean, that is true.
And if
but
I
it-
draw a
it-
land, I can just filter through.
Sure. All right. Well, he did draw a land here, and so he's gonna want to filter through here, as you mentioned. Yeah, it is kind of interesting because his deck really doesn't have that much diversity of permanent types. It's kind of like I drew a creature or I didn't.
Right.
Like it's not like, well, I don't want this combat trick right now. He doesn't have any. It's not like he just doesn't have any other stuff. So yeah, it does actually make sense. It's funny.
How Brad taps is also kind of interesting, right? Because we know that he has King Yorvo in his deck. But at the same time, he's got several 3-mana red creatures as well. And given that he has more of those, it makes sense to keep up that mountain instead of keeping up 3 forests when you choose to use the discard and draw card effect on Merchant of the Veil.
So Yorvo's the only card that really punishes him here, and he opens
Right.
up the opportunity to cast a few different spells. Makes sense. He's going to jam with everything here.
He's going to get in for 7 here, and Eli's going to go down to 3 life. Wow, Eli just drew like he drew a Prophet of the Peak. He's got an enchant. Yeah, his hand is so clunky.
This is probably it. And that's going to do
Yep.
it. Eli Kassis can only smile and shake his head.
Jeez, I did too. I kept one line on this game.
And he just couldn't find it. But Brad Nelson picks up the match 2-1 here. And he's 9-0. You're looking at probably your last undefeated player in the tournament at this point. So watch out, everybody. Brad Nelson's coming through.
That
Bard
felt-
is singing his tune, and you are not going to want to get in his way today, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, that main deck fell the pheasant. Game 1
I mean, it won him the
was
game.
so key. If he had not drawn that, I think he just loses.
Yep.
So
All right, well, we've got Josh Utter-Layton and Pyotr Glugofsky here facing off against each other. We did catch the end of that first game where we saw a whole bunch of rats get a big benefit from Return of the Wild Speaker. Looks like Two Unveiled Treefolk here for Raptor, as he is known.
yeah, Josh looks to have a superior board, and it looks like he's about to put 2+1/+1 counters on a Youthful Knight, which is fantastic as it has first strike. Very, very difficult to block. There's a Wicked Wolf too, in a 4/4 Wandermare. So the question is, can he make a big attack here? The one thing that he has to be concerned about here is the fact that he saw he might just lose on an attack back if Pyotr survives this attack, because we saw the Return to the Wild Speaker. Return of the Wild Speaker. That allowed Pyotr to win the last game with all the tokens that he created off the Mad Ratter. Also, this is typically what you see Josh Utter-Layton do here. This is typically a thing many players do when they choose attacks, kind of line up the opposing creatures with their creatures, because it just makes it a lot easier to kind of visualize what's potentially going to happen. And he knows that Glugofsky is also going to see the optimal and ideal blocks, so he's just doing it just to make sure that, for himself, that this is going to pan out.
Glugofsky falls down to 4. Violently shuffling the cards in his hand, perhaps trying to make them change into something that could save the game for him. But instead it's going to be Grumgully.
Josh looks to be in fairly good position here. If he draws a land, he can play the Two Unveiled Treefolk with... Looks like he has several other options here. Oh, wow, okay, so he's got a Fairy Guide Mother in hand, but it looks like he's not using... This tells me that he doesn't think that this is a lethal attack. He's probably going to wait until the last possible moment to go for the Gift of the Fae on Fairy Guide Mother to jump one of his creatures for lethal. But he is very interested in trying to keep the board as clear as possible, as he does not want to lose to Return of the Wild Speaker. Although now he's at 20 life, so things are looking pretty good.
That's my block. I'll pass priority. Effective and draw comes. So we go to 7 life.
So you see good precise play from our players here. Pyotr says, that is my block. Josh says, I will pass priority. And Pyotr says, all right, I'm going to sacrifice the food, pay for Trail of Crumbs. And as you mentioned, Paul, a non-lethal attack there because of that food.
Right.
It does change combat math pretty often.
Oof.
And wow, and you can also see why Josh Utter-Layton didn't feel the need to go all in there with the Fairy Guide Mother. And in fact, that is going to be game thanks to that Archon of Absolution representing lethal in the air all by itself, let alone the other creatures that Josh Utter-Layton had. By the way, Josh, originally from California, moved to Colorado a few years back, and it looks like he's got his Colorado clothes already here.
Oh, yeah.
He's ready for the weather.
He's fully transformed. Yeah. He's ready to go hiking.
Yeah.
Yeah, funny thing about Josh, he had kind of asked, he had made a statement. First draft ever was at day 1 of this event. Easy 3-0, and now he's looking to run it up again. But, you know, Hall of Famer, right?
He is.
So, I mean, I assume he's maybe watched a few drafts, but who knows?
You think so? Yeah, maybe. I'm with you. I assume he has as well.
But just from what we've seen, I mean, his deck looked pretty solid there. He's got 4 copies of Wildwood Tracker.
Wait. Look at him shuffle. What is going on? That's not how he shuffles.
I expect a card to slide out. Fall.
There we go.
Oh, there it is.
There's that Josh Layton trademark.
Mush everything together.
Oh, yeah. All right, let's take a look at Paulo Vitor Damarosa versus Arne Huschenbeth. They are underway in game number 2. It looks like Paulo, perhaps unsurprisingly, was able to find the route to victory there.
Yeah,
in his first game.
Yeah, the Steel Claw Lance, huge. Against
right.
all the 0-4s and 1-4 blockers that Arne had. But this is big.
Hypnotic Sprite.
Hypnotic Sprite, just countering anything, just feels so bad. And then to be able to follow that up with just a solid evasive creature.
Very nice sequence there for Arne.
But Paulo has the answer, or not.
Wow, snapped off there. Return that thing to nature. It is an artifact, the Trebuchet. It would have been perfect on this board as well, thanks to reach.
But Arne playing at a blistering pace
he is
here.
playing fast.
Yeah.
It looks like this is game 3 between these two.
You kept 1 or 2? I kept 1.
This also makes me feel like there might not be that much time left in the round.
It makes me feel that way too.
Yeah.
Also slightly nervous when I see players.
Yeah. It's like, is he missing something? But Return to Nature, of course, makes sense on the Trebuchet as it does have reach. So it would have been able to block that Hypnotic Sprite. Keeping that board clear and also refilling your hand is also very nice. Arne is up so many cards now.
Yeah, Unexplained Vision plus the Scry is going to set him up beautifully going forward, even though as the board state sits, well, there's only one non-land permanent. Like the explosions are going to start this turn, you know, for the next maybe 3 turns for both players where they can actually start building out a board, because so far, Paulo's got 2 cards in the graveyard, and the only advantage is the fact that one of them was an adventure for Arne, which he has going now. All right, well, let's pop back over to Josh Layton and Pyotr Glogovsky so we can keep an eye on how that one goes. I'm curious to see who could win that one.
I want you to know that if you want to see, you will have access to it if you care about that.
Josh has a smile on his face in the feature match area where he belongs. Wildwood Tracker kicks things off for him.
It's going to be a
And
nice little start.
Trail of crumbs now for Pyotr Glogovsky. Yeah, I agree.
Does he have a second one in hand?
Who, Glogovsky?
No, I thought Raptor might have had another Wildwood Tracker. Raptor just looking to curve out here, just running out the turn 2 Silverflame Squire. Of course, it has the adventure mode there.
Based on the deck that he drafted here, I would say he consulted at least one good friend about how to draft the format. Some of the pro players really favor a highly aggressive strategy.
Yeah, I mean,
there is a second Wildwood Tracker there.
And there's a good reason. Not only are there just lots of powerful 1-mana creatures in the format, there's also a lot of ways to force through damage. You have, I mean, and Raptor has all of them, right? You have the Fairy Guide Mother, and you have Ardenvale Tactician. So right now, he's going to be able to attack for 4. I guess not 4, just 2. But he's going to be able to attack, and then if Glogowski next turn even plays something like a Fierce Witch Stalker, Josh can actually just go end of turn, tap down whatever blocker you might have, and still get in for an additional attack, and then follow that up with an Evasive Flyer.
Now, the interesting part here is all of this works in the short term for Josh Hutter-Layton, but Trail of Crumbs plus 2 food could offer Glogowski not only solid life gain to make sure he doesn't just get killed out of nowhere, but also an ongoing stream of value.
Oh, but
This is going to be a real race here between these two.
Yeah, and the Archon of Absolution also just kind of taxes Glogowski's mana a little bit. If Piotr wants to get into a racing situation, you know, it's a lot harder to do that if you have to pay a mana every time you attack.
That's right. Yeah, this will probably dissuade him from doing so.
Yeah, I think Piotr wants to kind of play the role of the control deck in this matchup, as you know, there are plenty of Wildwood trackers on Josh Hutter-Layton's side of the battlefield. So Glogowski just choosing to try to stabilize here, and you know, he's got a couple of food in play. He's got Trail of Crumbs, so he's got some life to work with here, and just the ability to kind of go up on cards.
Yeah, unfortunately for Glogowski, the combo with Trail of Crumbs plus Mad Ratter isn't really a thing.
Josh?
You don't actually draw a card off of Trail, even if a card ends up going into your hand.
And this is really tough for Glogowski. He really needs to find either a reach creature or a removal spell, or these flyers are going to be his undoing.
Yeah, that's right. This is exactly what Josh needed to complete the pressure that he started, getting half of the life total from Glogowski already. I think it was going to be really tough for him to win on the ground with Silver Flame Squire and the Wildwood trackers, but flyers could definitely get the job done.
Yeah, the Witch Talker has already kind of stabilized the ground, but yeah, the Archon, the Griffin, and then just that Tactician also sitting on the sidelines. I mean, Glogowski has to fight through a lot here.
It's actually really difficult, too, because while the Trail of Crumbs can generate value for you, you can only get permanence off of it. So it's hard to find removal spells, especially when you're looking at the colors that Glogowski happens to be, where you know the cards you're looking for are burn spells or out muscle or something like that.
Yeah, he needs something like a Spore Cap Spider.
Yeah,
that'll at least be able to keep one of the creatures at bay.
Because in the meantime, he is getting smashed in the air. There's 6 more damage now. That's still a couple of more turns.
Wow, another flyer.
Yeah, wow. All right, Piotr. Pressure is on you, my friend. First things first, stop drawing lands. That would be my best advice for you. He has not done a good job of that yet, though, as he found another land for his draw step, giving him 3 lands in hand. So he finds another Mad Ratter, but yeah, he needs a Golden Egg because stuff on the ground is not the issue. Also, the Golden Egg does trigger Mad Ratter, so this is not the worst, but he needs to find something great here. With the Golden Egg or his next draw step, or he's going to be facing down lethal.
Yeah,
Rats, and remember, Grumgully is also going to give the Rats +1/+1 counters.
Yeah, so the thing that Josh now needs to just maybe slightly concerned about is Return of the Wild Speaker, but he does have a couple of ground creatures at bay, so I don't think Glogowski currently has the ability to get him for 20 points of damage.
No, not even close, because as you mentioned before, the Archon also really putting a wrench in those works. It's
absolutely.
5 mana for Return of the Wild Speaker, plus 1 for every creature. That is a tough sell.
And
you know what he drew?
Return of the Wild
he
Speaker.
did draw it, yeah. Now, there is a world where he ends up drawing 4 cards off of it, but he's only going to have a 1-turn window here. Like, it's really not going to go well for him. And now that has closed as well. Now he could draw 3 cards thanks to Grumgully. But
trample over for 1?
It doesn't look like it.
Glogowski in a lot of trouble here. I can't think of even too many cards here that Glogowski can draw, right? I mean, he's going to take 8 in the air here, go down to 2.
You are allowed in this trample. You are allowed?
So it actually did come up now that Glogowski noticed that he's supposed to get in for a trample. And I don't know if you heard it, but Josh Hutter-Layton actually said you are allowed to miss trample. What he's referring to is if you don't say that, I think the assumption is that you've put the extra damage onto a creature.
Right.
So I guess he doesn't get that trample point.
Okay, well, I don't know if Glogowski has a mass sweeper effect for flyers, but he did find a thrill of possibility that gives him some additional draws here. But Josh Utter-Leyton has 4 flyers in the battlefield. Every single one of them is lethal. Glogowski has the ability to sacrifice Golden Egg, go up to 5. But, I mean, Raptor has 11 power in the air.
Glogowski really taking his time here to try to figure out what his best chances are. He has to think about the cards that are in his library, what he could find if he fires off a Return of the Wild Speaker. He would draw currently 3 cards, and then what would he have mana for left over that could actually let him survive?
Yeah, it's kind of, I mean, the thing with Glogowski, his deck actually looks quite, I mean, he's got double Scorching Dragonfire, double Slaying Fire. So he has a lot of removal, but, you know, I think Raptor just has a few too many flyers, right? Like, he has to use the Thrill of Possibility, and even if he draws 2 Scorching Dragonfires, he can kill 2 of the flyers, gain 3 life, and go to 5. That still won't be enough.
No, so here it is, Thrill of Possibility. That does get him a couple of rats. Gosh, you can see how the game could work out for him, but he finds a land and something that didn't matter and extends the hand. Josh Utter-Leyton improves to 7-1-1 and is looking to be in good shape in this draft with a win under his belt in the first round. It was a close one, but that curve out there in game number 3 made it pretty easy for Josh. That game, you know, as much as Pyotr did, wasn't particularly close. He kind of got smashed early down to 10, and then it was flyer, flyer, flyer. What are you supposed to do?
I mean, Glogowski's hand was extremely slow. I mean,
Yes,
right? He went
very
turn 2 Trail of Crumbs, turn 3 go.
Yeah.
Right? Against Josh's hyper-aggressive,
Yep.
you know, green-white beatdown deck. And, yeah, it didn't really pan out for him. I mean, Glogowski has no shortage of good removal in his deck, but just wasn't able to find them for the flyers in time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough because Glogowski obviously had the power advantage. He was making rats. He had the Return of the Wild Speaker. Like, if the game goes for a while, he'll win, but no way he can beat those evasive threats. Wow, this one has not gone well for Arne. It looked good early, and he's got turn into a pumpkin to return. Wait, what did he return to hand? Don't say he returned a Murderous Rider to hand.
Okay, I won't say that.
I think he did, though, didn't he? Not where you want to be. Obviously, Arne just doing what he has to do to survive at this point, but not a great position to find yourself in. And here's Barrowich's now for PV. And what is he going to get back?
Is there like a Smith Swordmaster in there?
Lost Legion.
Lost Legion, okay. Oh, yeah, this is
And a
gonna be too
Jousting
much.
Dummy. Yeah, there's no way. I mean, the issue here is that if you're blue-green, you just don't have outs to this type of scenario.
How did this happen? He was up so many cards.
I have no idea. And this is a good turn here for Arne, but you just know that Paulo Vitor is going to be able to win the game here.
I mean, when you bounce a Murderous Rider, what's the chances you win a match where you bounce a Murderous Rider?
I think your win percentage drops by like 15% just by making that play. Yeah, this is easily a lethal attack.
Yeah.
The Reaper's going to jump into the air. That's half of Arne's life total, and he only needs to get in for 2 other creatures of any sort, and the game will end. And that's exactly what happened. Paulo Vitor Dominarosa is now 8-1. Let's not lose track of that little storyline.
Some of these,
One of the GOATs.
yeah, some of the these Hall of Famers flexing their muscles here, right? We had Josh Utter-Leyton, you know, had not really been as invested into competitive Magic recently, but still proving that he still got it.
He
still got it.
No problem. He gets a quick crash course on Limited and just says, well, I don't see what the problem. This is an easy game, right?
He probably just like, you know, hey, Ben Stark, what's going on with Limited? Ben will probably not stop talking until you tell him to,
That's
and
right.
then you know everything that you need, and then all you do is just win matches and draft.
You can ask Luis. He'll just
Absolutely.
There you go, and he's got his information. So, and of course, the biggest headline coming out of the feature match area here is Brad Nelson, who has improved now to 9-0.
9-0. 9-0.
9-0. So really great stuff. What we're going to do now, though, is we're going to take a short break. But when we come back, we're going to have Time Walk Magic as well. Don't go anywhere.